Hi guys.
Hey.
So thank you so much for coming to our last panel. We want to give a huge shout out to Amber and the Lounge Theater for hosting us today.
Yay!
So tonight from 4 to 6 there will be a mixer at the Broadwater, just a few blocks down Santa Monica.
Yay!
10% of the sales today go back to the Fringe, and we also do have a drink special tonight. A few last bits of housekeeping before we get started. Office hours are right across the street at Black every Wednesday, starting at 7 on the 15th, 22nd, and 29th. So finishing out May at Black. The last thing is office hours. Our final office hours is on June 6th. Cool thing about that is it's going to include live band karaoke to finish out the night. And we're also doing our runway event then. So the runway applications will be out soon. You get 2 people from your show to strut their stuff for about 30 seconds. We also have opening night on Wednesday, June 12th at LGBT Center. Fringe prom Wednesday, June 26th at Black. Then the award ceremony on Sunday, June 30th at the Montalban Theater. And closing night right across the street at St. Felix. This year we are having a Fringe Central over at La La Land Gallery. Super excited about that. Stop by, grab a drink.
When does that start? The
That's
on the 13th.
13th.
Okay.
Yeah, so the day after the opening night party.
Okay.
The last Twitter chat is going to be on Monday, May 20th from 7 to 8 p.m. And speaking of Twitter, we are doing prom theme voting that is closing soon. So you can vote on your prom theme, whatever theme you want, by using the hashtags HFFProm and HFF19. It's a community-driven prom theme, so whatever theme you guys want to do, put it out there, and the ones with the most likes will get nominated. This will be recorded by Dave and posted to our Fringe TV YouTube channel, which is linked on our homepage. Finally, with Fringe TV, we are doing a lightning round open call at the Broadwater second stage on Thursday, May 30th from 3:30 to 6:30. Just show up in costume and give a 10-second pitch about your show.
Cool.
So thank you so much to our staff. We have Dave over there on camera. We got Corwin Evans and Brandon Baruch doing the panel. We have Ellen, our community programs director, Stina, our volunteer director, and myself, who is the events manager. If you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns, email them to Dave at support. He gets back to them 100% of the time. I don't know how he does it, but he does. Finally, there will be a short Q&A afterwards and a mixer following at Broadwater. Thank you so much, and then I'll let these people take it over.
Hello, everyone. Hi, I'm Brandon Baruch. This is my dear friend Corwin Evans. We're here to teach you.
Protect the Fringe chat.
That's right.
We rehearsed extensively for that.
We did. We, between the two of us, have 57 years of experience with the Hollywood Fringe Festival. We have both designed and teched many shows in the festival over the last many years. I've been with the festival since year 1. When did you start playing?
I've never really officially been, but I've always been around. Yeah, Rubber knows what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah.
So, but we want to thank you guys so much for coming out. We have a lot of information that we're going to go through, and before we start, everything that we are going to tell you and show you today is available via the link on the project page for this event. So we've created a Google Drive folder and a QR code, and everything we're going to show you is all available for your use for free, including the document that we're going to be reading from, which is something that we've built over the last few years based on our own experience.
And this points to bit.ly/HFF19howto. HFF is uppercase, how-to is lowercase. That link is also in the event description and written in the sky.
So we encourage you to
It's not
please,
written in the sky.
It's not written in the sky. Please take notes if you feel like it. We're going to hold questions until the end, and then we'll happily answer any and all questions you have. So feel free to jot down a question if something pops up in your mind.
And these are all best practices suggestions. Everyone's show is different. When I polled the spaces as we were preparing to do this, I found that there was at least 4 or 5 spaces that only had one show in them. Is anyone here from that sort of a thing, doing an immersive thing? Sweet. Immersive is a big thing right now, so if you're going in that direction or if you're here representing someone in that, you might want to talk to us. Because we've both done immersive experiences, we're not really going to cover that yet because each one is so wildly different in its needs that there isn't really a one-size-fits-all solution.
Should they speak directly into the camera for this one?
That's what's up.
Is there anyone here where this is your first time doing a show in the Hollywood Fringe Festival?
Oh,
Fantastic.
yeah.
Is there anyone here where this is your first time producing or putting on a piece of theater altogether? Wow. Wow.
Came
Great.
to the right place.
Okay, good. So, the goal of this workshop is to help you maximize the short amount of time given to have tech rehearsals for your show. Because Corwin and I both believe that if properly organized and prepared, you can get a lot done with a little bit of time, and you can really create some beautiful, beautiful design as needed for your piece. So the first thing that we like to ask ourselves is,
What does my show need?
what does my show need? So yeah, please.
This can be the most compelling performance.
Oh boy. Stay in your life.
Just in and of itself. Everyone's gonna try and do video slides. Come in, you miss nothing apart from an opening invocation where we explained everything. No. That was very charitable and I thank you.
I'm a good audience.
Yeah, thank you, holding it down for the rest of us. A few select choices can help you put a context and a space and a time. That can just be a piece of music, that can just be a slide, that can just be lighting. In this case, it's very warm and I feel it excellently rendered. Thank you, Brandon. Also top light. That's necessary.
We should explain our specialties. I'm a lighting designer, and Corwin is a sound and video designer. And so that's the field of expertise that we're bringing in.
Brendan is also a composer and playwright and also a union electrician. So
There it is.
overlapping.
Well, one of the topics that we're going to come back to over and over again is that your tech time during the Hollywood Fringe Festival is not a time to be making creative decisions. These are all decisions that you want to make before you walk into your venue. So we really need to ask ourselves to do an honest and thorough inventory of our technical needs. What do we need in terms of lighting? What do we need in terms of sound? What do we need in terms of props? Everything sorted out before you walk into your space.
And this includes scenic elements, this includes props. All of this stuff is going to have to get loaded in and loaded out in 15 minutes, and realistically, 5. Prepare for under. Always shoot for under, because the cardinal sin is making someone late for another show. You do not want to go over ever. Going under your time is a little gift, because then people have time to pee and get a drink. Basically, any sort of fluid management strategy can happen in that spot.
Yeah. So just a reminder, this document itself will also be available to you on the Google Drive, but feel free to also take photos of it. So, what should I expect from a venue? The real answer is nothing. And with all due love and respect to our wonderful venue manager, Amber, sitting in the back row.
Shout out to the lounge.
We are really very impressed year after year by the way that venues take care of their renters. And we think that the venue managers in the Hollywood Fringe Festival do a really wonderful job of supporting all of the shows that come through their venues.
Year to year, it improves as well.
However, the only safe way to tech your show is to expect nothing and bring in anything that you might need. And so, what this means is
you should have expectations, a conversation with what you may possibly need with your venue manager before you go into tech. There should be that sort of thing. If you need a special, in this case, a special is a particular light pointed at a particular side of the stage, like those, to make sure that you are lit for this one emotional moment where we go behind the bar and have a serious conversation, and are also beautifully rendered in back blue so that pops nicely.
he's mocking me because I very last minute added this top light because I didn't want to do this presentation without a top light.
Crucial and necessary. But these are all the things that you'll need to know.
So
if I walk center stage and I give myself the most impassioned monologue that's incredibly beautiful, now I'm suddenly in the dark. This is kind of a bummer.
So we think that it is reasonable to expect from your venue a basic sound system. We think that it is reasonable to expect from your venue a basic lighting system, and this is usually going to include what's called a repertory lighting plot. And a repertory lighting plot is a light plot that is designed to be useful to multiple productions. And so, hello, welcome, come on in. Join us.
I hope I didn't miss much.
No,
Not at all. And everything that we're saying will be covered in a document you can download after as well.
So we think that it is safe to expect for your venue to offer a full stage wash, perhaps a system of top, perhaps a system of bottom. In terms of scenic elements, there are some venues that might be able to give you a chair or a cube, perhaps a table. We walked in and found this lovely little table bench thing. But unless it's something that you have talked about with your venue ahead of time, do not expect or plan on any kind of furniture element.
If you only need 2 chairs and a table, most of the spaces can accommodate that. If you only need a rehearsal block, like this Pellegrino stand I've been using, a lot of spaces have this too. And this is kind of a lot of different things. Your mind can wander, take you to places only your imagination can satisfy. But this is like, I mean, if you need a period 17th century chair because you're doing a period 17th century monarch intrigue of some sort, maybe get looking on that now and have that be the only thing that you bring, because that in and of itself is fascinating. It's just, boom, there's the throne. Or the Iron Throne, I mean, whatever. I mean, if you know you're gonna need that one thing to sell you over the line and put you in that space, that's gonna be crucial, but you're gonna need to get it yourself. And generally check with the venue too, that you can have it there, because storage space is also limited. We'll touch on that again in a minute, but
So, what should I expect a venue not to have?
anything you need.
So this covers any kind of specific furniture or property item. We listed a couple of funny examples, such as hospital gurneys and shopping carts and unwieldy props.
They're funny, but they all happen in real life.
Yeah.
The quest for a dentist chair has plagued LA producers for years. That keeps coming up, and they always show up and they're wicked heavy and unwieldy. And then you're like, venue manager, can I put this dentist chair here and leave it here? And they're like, it's freaking huge. Where am I going to stick it? Not everybody's doing a dentist play.
So from a tech standpoint, whereas it is acceptable to expect, we think it's reasonable to expect a basic speaker system, do not necessarily expect a system to play your sound for you. Many of the venues we've surveyed do have computers that run QLab, but you need to make sure that they have that to provide to you, or else if you show up and you expect them to play music off a thumb drive and there's nothing to read that thumb drive, that's on you. Mm-hmm. So again, and this is a point that we're going to come back to a lot, is anything that you think you might need, just check with your venue that they have it. Some venues already have a tech rider that you get with your rental, which will let you know exactly what they have. We love those venues. But always communicate with your venue managers for your tech needs.
This includes consumable props that might require a refrigerator. Does someone make a big old peanut butter and ham sandwich in the middle of the show? I don't know, maybe, but you're gonna need to keep the ham cold unless you're popping down to buy ham every day, which sounds kind of like a bummer. That's worth checking into.
Yeah. Exactly.
It was the peanut butter and ham, wasn't it? I fear you. I'm gonna keep curveballing the whole time and see if I can get him.
It
So-
usually happens once or twice.
What do we need to prepare ahead of time?
Everything that we think a stage manager might need to run our show for us. Now, in our survey, most of the venues this year, in the last few years, do provide you with your own stage manager. Can I see a show of hands? Is there anyone here in this audience doing a show in the venue, in the festival, that does not have a stage manager or technician attached to their project through the venue? Cool. Okay. What venue are you with, just out of curiosity?
The Actors Company?
Gotcha. And have you hired your own stage manager?
Not yet.
Okay.
I think the Actors Company requires you to use their technician.
Sometimes they call them technicians and sometimes they call them stage managers.
Oh.
Basically, it's someone in the booth who pushes buttons for you.
I have a tech.
Great.
That should
So-
be sufficient.
You want to prepare your show so that when you walk in and you meet your tech for the first time, you have everything organized as neatly as possible to allow them to run your show for you and to get up to speed with your show as quickly as possible. And so we're going to spend a little bit of time now discussing how to do this. Basically, what you need to remember is that all of these technicians / stage managers in the venues, they are often doing anywhere between 6 to 10, sometimes 12 shows in the festival, sometimes more. And so they have all of these shows in their head. And so we really also love our venue technicians. They get some great talent, and you guys are going to be in such good hands.
Usually people working all over LA as stage managers or technicians on full productions at all levels. People who are union members of Equity for stage managers, people who work at Center Theater Group and all the other bigger theaters in town. They come and do stuff like this.
But remember that they only have the bandwidth to think about your show as much as they can think about your show with the 12 others in their head. So everything that you can prepare for them on paper makes it that much easier for them.
Mm-hmm.
So, does anyone know what lighting and sound cues are? Does that terminology feel familiar? One person?
Yes.
Great. Okay. So,
For anybody who didn't say so, a cue is when something changes or happens. Anything, any incremental thing is itself a cue.
yeah. So, what we like to do as designers and as Fringe practitioners is we like to start by going through our script and deciding what cues do we need and where do they go. Anytime you have a shift into a different lighting schema, it's a scene that was in the daytime and then you go to a blackout, that's a lighting cue. If you go to a scene change transition light so that you can have a little bit of blue light to move chairs around, that is a lighting cue. Anytime the sound gets hotter or it gets louder or softer, starts or stops, that's a sound cue.
Doorbells, dog barks.
Those are all cues. So you go through your script in order, and you write down anytime you think a cue might be needed. This does not have to be exact. This isn't final. This is just starting the process. This is figuring out what do you think you need. You can go back through it and you can say, you know what, I bet you we need to add something here, or I feel like having a tonal shift here is probably unnecessary for this bit of storytelling, so we're going to remove this one. But you want to get them all in order in a list and have a little note of what the cue does. So not just lights here, but lights fade out here. Not just sound here, but doorbell sound or musical _ fades in.
The next step is determining the timing, which that could be, yeah, we're going to want to play this Mozart Requiem for this emotional moment, but we really don't need the whole 8 minutes, 12 minutes, whatever, because that's a lot of dead air for beautiful music.
We're going to hold all questions till the end, but we will do a full Q&A.
So timing is what part is the biggest bang for your buck, which part is your favorite part. A lot of techs can program that for you in the Q Lab when you get there. Some venues have an upper limit on cues. I believe at the lounge it's 30 light cues, 20 sound cues, and 20 video cues. Is that right?
Those are just for what our technicians will program.
Right.
Anything past that, if you're doing that many, you should really have a sound designer or a light designer come in and call them and program it.
And the reason,
our technicians are.
yeah, the reason for that is, and I've got 2 shows in Fringe, both of which have over that number of cues. So that is, it pays to have that not be in your head. It pays for that not on your plate, because people like us can roll in and do something in 4 hours that could take you 8, 20, 150 if you have to learn how to do many different things, especially with video, because it is so specific and it can be anything and it needs to be a specific thing, and then it's a back and forth conversation. We're actually going to go lighter on video this year than we used to, because we used to tell people, don't do it. It's a brutal mistake. You're going to screw yourself over and have absolutely no time for the rest of tech, because you'll be worried about all of this stuff. It's Los Angeles. Everyone's very awake to visual media, the screen. So you kind of fight that shared lexicon a little bit. Beyond the highfalutin epistemological reasons not to do it, it's a time sink.
Yeah.
I spent 8 hours programming a show and still almost got done in time. because there was 150 something photos.
Yeah,
And it was
we started
about the
setting up
photos.
this projector 2 nights ago, and we still can't get full screen. So another aspect to timing is also how do the cues interact with each other, which is you should decide, do lights and sound happen together? For example, if you have a blackout at the end of a scene, do you want the lights to start fading to black at the same time that transition music plays, or do you want the music to come in line early and then have the lights fade out, or do you want to wait for the lights to get to completely black before you hear the sound? So little things, the nuances of how the cues relate to each other are also an important element to consider. So then there's
What it is, where it goes, how long it goes for, and then how it all comes together.
So when we say how is the cue called, in larger theaters where a stage manager is on headset to different board ops, they will actually call the cue. They will say lights 495 go, and that's called calling a cue. So in our parlance, calling a cue is executing the cue, even though your stage manager will probably have the book in front of them and will be pressing the buttons themselves. So you need to consider, is a cue called on a line? Is there a line, like maybe there's a comedic moment where it's line, beat, beat, blackout. You need to figure out how many beats do you want. Or for example, do you have a moment where someone goes and flips a light switch where you want the lights to turn on there? That is what's called a visual light cue. And you want to take a note of this is look for the visual, because they can't keep their eyes in the book, they have to actually watch for that gesture.
Was anybody thrown by the introduction of the term beat?
Very good.
It's a brief pause. It's also very subjective, and you know it when you see it.
Yeah.
That's the best I can define. Let's take a beat. Excellent.
So you want to make sure that you prepare a cue sheet for every department of your show, sound, lighting, video. If you have a lot of set moving choreography that your actors are executing, for example, if you have a bunch of chairs that get switched in different locations, it might not be a bad idea to also map out all of those changes ahead of time and just get that on paper that, chairs go into a V formation, chairs go off to side, etc. We would call that a scenic or a deck shift.
Is anyone doing a one-person show?
Yeah.
Nice.
Obviously, that
Okay.
doesn't really apply to you because you'll be doing all of your own heavy lifting, or not, as the case might be.
So once you have all your cues, the next thing that you're going to do is you're going to actually put them into the script. And this is going to create what we like to call a
Prompt book.
prompt book.
Sorry, we rehearsed that one meticulously.
Yeah.
There is a sample prompt book inside of the Google Drive. Let's see. There it is. Sample prompt book.pdf. But I'll use the local copy because why not?
So, in this case, I have chosen to use the terminology LX to represent light cues and SQ to represent sound cues. So, this is all typed up. I did this using a free PDF editor. Feel free to do this in pencil or pen, right, Corwin?
Yeah, because pen you can always just scratch out and add more, and then it's not messy at all.
Yeah. So,
You know what's up.
little side tip. Don't use pen. Always use a pencil. Things are going to change during tech. You're always going to be erasing and redoing stuff. And there are some people out there who really like to use pen, and then at the end of the day, they take a new script and they cleanly transfer it over. Fine, you do you. Just don't do you. Use a pencil. So, in this case, if you'll zoom out a little bit, what we've done is we've just written where the lights and sound happen. So, lights up, top of scene. Just put it right above the scene. Sound cue A, sound fade down. So in this case, we're assuming that there was some kind of transitional music playing.
It is scene 6.
Yeah.
Oh, and we've done a thing here where we've made sound cues letters A through Z, and then either AB or AA, ABB, etc., etc. So that when you are referring to it in a master cue sheet, in the prompt book, and possibly calling, if it's a big enough show that you have 2 board ops or whatever, you can never be mistaken that sound cues and lighting cues are different. In my personal preference, I don't always do that. It's kind of down to what the stage manager wants from me, so they can keep it all straight in their head. But this is a really great way to keep things clear from a glance in your own head and make sure that everything makes sense.
Right. So sound cue A, sound fade down, wait until she lands center stage. So that is a note that I'm giving to the stage manager that she's looking for a specific blocking moment and waiting until that blocking moment to execute the sound. Sound cue B visual with iPad, you can see in the stage direction, she presses play on her iPad. So what you could even do is you could draw a line all the way over here just to make it super clear. Scrolling. These are all visual light cues based on blocking. If you have a cue that's based on a specific line, the way that I like to do it is I like to draw a little rectangle around the last word of that line and then draw a line all the way over to the side. Typically, you always want to keep your cue notations in the margin. Even if you're using pencil, you should try to keep them in a straight column so that it's easier for visual reference for the stage manager to read and to follow along.
A lot of stage managers also put flags, like you find in contract signed documents where they put the little arrow next to the thing, or like a tab stop like you would find in a file folder for anyone who still uses paper, whatever. But that's way, when you have the script all bunched together, all the little cues are sticking out the side. Handy reference, so you can flip to it really quick when you are doing a cue to cue or any other sort of quick reference kind of stuff.
Okay. Here's something that's very, very important, which is please, 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 please put page numbers on the document that you give to your stage manager. And the courteous thing to do is to hole punch it and provide it in a 3-hole binder. Your stage manager might have a large binder that they like to keep everything in. They might give you the binder back, but it's a nice thing to do to give it to them completely prepared, rather than a loose assortment of papers, paper clipped or binder clipped together.
Inevitably, the binder clip will slip and cause you nothing but grief while the papers flutter out across the floor in a beautiful moment.
Yep. Yeah. What else?
I think we got prompt book.
Yeah, you know,
Shall I
something
skip
we did not discuss when we were having our little meeting. Some stage managers, we should survey next time. I don't know the answer to this. Some stage managers might want to hold on to your script and always have it. Some might ask you to hold on to it for them and give it to them at the top of every show.
The majority of stage managers are going to ask to hold on to it themselves.
Great.
Because they love you but don't trust you to bring it back.
There you go. So that's something you should just check and see what they want and do it the way they like it.
And when you've completed your prompt book, it's probably worth having a spare copy with you anyway, for much the same reason that we're going to tell you once you've programmed your show to have a copy of it with you. It's not that things always happen. It's not even that things sometimes happen. It's that things could happen. And it's a lot nicer to be able to have that little piece of preparation in the event of a catastrophe than not.
So before we move on, let's go back to cue lists and let's show the cue list document as well.
Yes.
So once you have this prompt book made, what we like to do,
This way.
sample cue for Fringe, yeah. This is a very small example, but this is using the same, do you have open the Excel sheet because this is missing the notes column. This is using the same cues from that sample cue. And again, all of these files are available in the Google Drive. But an Excel / Google Sheets / Numbers, whatever software you like to use, creating, and you can even download this file and you can use this template with my blessing. There we go, that's the one. So what this does is this shows the page that the cue happens, the number of the cue / the letter of the cue. It tells me the moment that it happens, it tells me a brief description of what's happening, and it also tells me my best guess of timing. If you're working with a stage manager who's going to be programming your cues for you, lights and sound, it's good to give them a general guess of timing. If you don't speak the language of cue timing, for example, if a 5-second light and fade out doesn't mean anything to you, then you can say fast, slow, medium, bump. Bump means 0 count, straight out, including sound or lights, just done. So it's okay for the timing to say, see the first one I said, medium, fast, question mark, like I don't know. And also when you're in the space, it's absolutely your prerogative to say, hey, could you show me what that would look like a little slower? Could I see that a little faster?
Add a second, take a second off.
Yeah. But this is just a great way to walk into the room already having most of your things thought out. And then I also included a notes column. You don't have to use it. For example, wait till the couch is clear, just in case sometimes the scene change runs a little long. It's a reminder, hey, we need that to be clear.
Aesthetically, QLab defaults to 5-second fades, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a pretty good place to start up and
Yeah.
down. Half that, about 3, it's 1, 2, 3, a little bit more drama, and then like a 1 second is like, so you'll feel it as you go. Like, where do you want to take some of the air out of the room, and where can you take a moment to appreciate whatever the shift is, or prepare people for what's coming next.
That's interesting. Yeah, because I guess you're right. A sound, like a 5 second is kind of a good default sound fade. I would say that a 3 second is a good default light fade. 3 seconds up or down is usually a nice generic into and out of a scene. And if you really have no idea and you can't visualize it, ask them to show you. Say, could you show me what this looks like on a 3 second fade? And be like, oh, I want that faster.
Nobody's going to be doing 250 cues, and if you do, you probably have one of us in the room
Yeah,
with you.
I'm doing 250
Supply
cues for
that.
one of mine.
Yeah, me too. But so then there is some room to play with each cue a little bit in tech. We say don't make any creative decisions, but those are the creative decisions you should look at in tech.
Yeah.
Excellent.
All right. Working with the venue's stage manager. First and foremost,
We did it. Please continue.
be nice. As we mentioned, these professionals hired for your convenience. They are likely working on a dozen or more shows, most of which are less prepared than you are because they didn't come to this workshop.
Yeah,
So-
there's a lot of people not here right now.
If you show up to your tech ready to go, if you have all this paperwork prepared, they're going to love you. And if they love you, they're going to do that little extra bit of effort to make your tech even more smooth and even easier for you.
Generally speaking, if you're the cool show, if you're the show that has their stuff together and is always pleasant and unflustered by the person who went late ahead of your tech, and you're just a kind person who is fun to work with, not only does that make them really like you and want to do anything to make sure that your show goes well, they tell other people that you're cool, because all the stage managers meet and talk, and that's how we find out about what shows are cool, what shows are hot. There is a buzz network that comes from the people who run these things. So it behooves you to be kind and generous and gentle and helpful to everyone, just in a matter of negotiating Fringe. I'm sure other people have mentioned that as we went, but from a very real functional technical standpoint, it will help you to be chill.
Yes. We like to remind you that your stage manager does not know your piece. When you are doing a Fringe show, especially when it's your first show, if it's something you've been rehearsing for 4 weeks, 6 weeks, a month, 5 years, it becomes a very personal project to you. And it is reasonable to expect them to do the job they're hired for. It is not reasonable to expect them to drink the Kool-Aid. And so you need to remember, especially when you walk in, they haven't seen your show, they don't know the style, they don't know the genre, they don't know the ins and outs of the show the way you do, and it is your job to properly articulate your needs to them. And so be prepared to communicate that, and also if you really just don't speak tech and you just don't know what lighting and sound should be, and you can't visualize or hear it in your head, I would recommend that you trust your stage manager to make choices for you. If you know what you want, ask for it and get it, great. If you don't know what you want, say, I really don't know what I want, give me something please. But then also be prepared to accept it. Don't say, I don't know what I want, but I don't want this. You know what I mean?
It's challenging to work with at the best of times. And if you are completely up the river, like just with no idea, then there are designers out there who can negotiate that process and help walk with you, especially if the piece is particularly sound driven, like a show about a musician's life. It'd be weird if it was quiet. It'd be weird if there wasn't any sort of music quality to it. You can work with somebody to help negotiate that and fill in the cracks that you might not have deep knowledge of. And then that way you wind up with a much better product, because you don't have to worry about trying to invent the wheel. Somebody else has already got a sports car outside. Get in, go for a ride.
Yeah. All right, so we've made our cue lists. We've made our prompt book. We are all ready to go into our tech. Let's talk a little bit now about
Departments.
some departments. So I'll do my lighting department.
Fantastic.
I mentioned earlier the concept of a repertory plot, a rep plot. Most venues were going to provide you with some sort of drawing of either a rep plot or a magic sheet to give you an idea of where the lights are. Has anyone obtained a drawing like this from their venue yet? No. Amber, have you sent out any lighting rep plots, or when does that typically go out?
You're putting me on the spot.
A lot of people do it in the space,
Yeah.
and a
Yeah.
lot of people don't send them out. So
Okay.
We don't send out the light red plot just because we set our plot the first
So
2 days
close
of
to-
our
sure.
2 weeks of tech, and the tech start the next day.
a lot in the general frame of working with venues, they will send you this paperwork to the designer far in advance, or the designer will send them a plot to hang stuff. In the Fringe sort of view, it tends to be space specific, and it tends to be based on the resources that are available, so you don't always get full documentation of that kind of stuff.
Add to that though, all of our technicians do know what the light plot
Great.
will be, so.
So when you get into your venue, the technician will usually have a drawing something, and they will usually have something they will happily show you. And what you should look for is it's either going to be a drawing that literally symbolizes all of the different units in the space, all of the different lights, that kind of shows how many there are and where they're pointing. The general information you need to know is how many lights do you have, where are they pointing, what type of light are they? Are they front light, are they back light, are they side light, are they diagonal, are they specials, for example, a tighter center stage thing. And then also it should tell you what color they are. And your options, it probably won't give you a gel color, it will probably say warm or cool, blue or pink.
I think there are even a couple spaces that have like a chandelier for house lights.
Yeah.
That might not be this year, but a couple years past they've had like something a little funkier too.
Now, a lot of venues also have LEDs, and the advantage of an LED is that it has multicolor options. And so I know that Lounge 1 uses some LEDs. I assume they're going up in Lounge 2 again. And so those are nice because you can kind of do whatever color you need. I think it's reasonable to ask your venue if they're going to have LEDs. I think every venue pretty much has LEDs in their plot by this point, but you should find out because then you can think in terms of more color choices.
Black may not because it's a one-person show venue, so they might have a little different sort of thing going on. I've asked Matt about it, the quiz, but I think that's a little bit more like a cabaret style thing. So if anyone's doing a show in there, it's going to be a little bit different vibe.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
So I think it's less important for you to understand exactly how to read the magic plot as it is to understand the concept of what type of lights are offered to you. So if you know that you have warm and cool front lights versus you have one color front light and warm and cool top lights, it's good to understand that, to know if you have stage right versus stage left, if you have 4 areas of light or 3 or just 2. And if you don't understand, you can ask your venue stage manager or technician to explain it to you. But you should have a general sense of the tools available to you lighting-wise.
Where can I go on stage? What's lit? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And also, this is a pretty functional note, but we threw it in there anyway. Everybody always forgets the top of show spiel. This is, has anyone not been to Fringe before?
Yeah, there's a couple newbies.
Okay, so one of the general tropes, as it were, or sort of understood expectations, is that at the top of the show, someone will come out and be like, "Hey everybody, welcome to How to Take a Fringe Show. My name is Corwin Evans. I'm so glad that all of you came here." There's usually lots of bowing and hand clapping and gesticulation. Just while we're at it, I want to say thanks to everybody from Lounge over there. They're doing All My Sons. You should check that out while that's going on, because we're going to be here doing this, but please give our buddies a look too.
Thank you to our Kickstarter donors.
Thank you to our
Mom.
Kickstarter donors.
We mentioned this because in terms of light cues, you should plan on this being a light cue. A light
Almost
cue
everybody
for the
forgets it.
pre-show
Almost
curtain
everybody
speech.
forgets it.
And also when you're making your list. Here's the general protocol for starting a show. You have what's called your pre-show cue. This is what the lights look like when the audience enters. This is usually kind of dim stage, maybe highlight a little bit of your scenery, house lights up. You're going to need a pre-show speech cue. You're going to need your house lights to go to half and then out. You're probably going to want a full blackout before you start your show, although not always, but you just need to think through that. Do I want the lights to go to black before the show starts, or do I want the lights to already be up and stay up or shift into something as the actors enter? Your choice, something to consider.
Am I using the house going to half to cue actors to walk on? If so, can they see that?
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
House to half usually is a gesture just to let the audience know it's starting. If there are people milling about, it tells them to sit. If they're talking, it tells them to be quiet. Likewise, at the end of the show, don't forget to do your final blackout. You're going to want a blackout cue. You're going to want a separate curtain call light cue for bows, unless you don't do bows, but most shows do. And then after your curtain call cue, you're going to need a final walk out look, which is again going into a general stage look and bringing the house lights back up as the audience exits after your show.
This is all stuff that's super easy to just drive by when you're in the midst of teching your show, because you figure out the container and you forget the entrance and exit of it.
Yeah. So we included a little note here about numbering systems, which is that there are some venues that will do stacked queuing, where, for example, they will give you lights 501 through 550, and then the next show after you is 551 through 560, and they have all of the different shows stacked in one show file. And so when you number your queues, be aware that the venue stage manager might change that, and if they do, maybe you want to update your paperwork to note it, but that is something that might happen. All right. Oh, this is my favorite part, where I go sit down and let Corwin talk about things that I don't understand.
This is the Corwin show now. Sal, is anyone not familiar with QLab? Dope. It is a free piece of software that runs on Mac computers, put out by Figure 53. There's links to all this stuff in the thing and elsewhere. You can also just look up QLab. It's QLAB.
The last page of this PDF has links to all the things we talk about.
And I think they even mirror older versions of QLab, but I recommend going to the site, because if you go to the site, there are tutorials, there are support groups that you can go and talk with, I think through Google Groups. That's the closest thing to industry standard that we have going on right now for sound, and now that also does lighting and video. I think the studio stage uses a QLab light system.
No, they have EOS.
They have EOS,
No,
okay. They were for, but nonetheless, I don't know if any other spaces do that, but some might have it all just in a QLab. When I do shows, I like to have everything run through QLab, even if it triggers a lighting board. We probably don't have time or infrastructure to do this, so don't worry about it. But just so you know, it does sound, it does video, that includes still pictures. So a lot of the places, your sound and video cues are going to be the same machine, and it's all going to come from the QLab. It's a really simple drag and drop interface. I usually, you can program it in advance if you have a Mac computer. There's also a version called Go Button that's available for iPads. So if you just want to get an iPad, I think it's a $50 program, and you can run it off of that.
Now, we think it's important to note that there are different versions of QLab, and
Yes.
Venues might be using different versions. And so before you go and program your entire show file, if the venue is going to be running it off of their own computer, make sure that you're using the same version. Because if you program a beautiful, complicated show file in version 4 and show up and they're running version 3, you're going to have to program it all over again.
Yes. Although I did find out that if you did do that in 4, you can copy paste it into a 3 queue stack, and it pretty much carries over. So it's not catastrophic. If, however, they're still running 2, or God forbid 1, you're pretty much SOL on that one. So generally speaking, you can download from Figure 53 version 3 and build it all in that, and it will open in 4 and 3. If you do it all in 4, it will only open in 4, and you'll have to copy it over into 3. Not catastrophic, but worth knowing before you go out there that that's something to keep an eye on.
Now, as we mentioned at the top of this, there are many venues that will expect you to bring in your own computer to run sound and video. And so you should make sure that you have a laptop to do that from. And if you can't use QLab, if you don't have a Mac, we've also included a PC program. But the point is that sound, anything that can be programmed at home should be programmed at home. And you can test it on your own speakers. You're still going to need to set new levels when you get into the space. But if you have all your fades and cues already programmed and numbered, it's going to save you a lot of time, because all you're doing is plugging in your mic jack, and you're good to go.
And there's so much stuff on YouTube in terms of tutorials and so forth for QLab. For multiplay, this is a freeware software. Oh, and QLab is free for 2 channels of audio and 1 channel of video. So all of that stuff can be done and run exactly the way the show will run. For multiplay, it's a little bit more esoteric because there isn't really documentation to describe how to use it, but it's still free, and it runs on, I think I got as far as Windows 7 machines. Pretty sure it's still good for Windows 10. It's, I think, still kind of a drag and drop thing. It's a little bit more like an old Windows program, so it's a little less intuitive, but you have enough time now to figure out how to program a show with it if you want to go that road. Also, the benefit is if you're going to buy a computer to run shows, Woot.com, there's a link in this too, has cheap laptops, something around $300 to $500. You might also get lucky and get like a $150 computer sometimes. That can be sufficient to run a show. Otherwise, if you're looking at buying a Mac, I recommend MacofAllTrades.com because they sell refurb Mac computers at a pretty decent discount. That's what this one is from. Like, I managed to pick this up for something like $700, and this came out for like $1,500 new. So it's a really nice way to figure that stuff out. And I think they have the entire Apple line of products.
Now, you might be wondering, why can't I just run it off of my phone or off of the CD? And you can. But the thing that is really advantageous about these free softwares is that you can program in your starts and stops. And so if you play a sound cue in QLab, once that track is finished, it doesn't do anything else. Whereas if you're doing it off of an iPhone or a CD, you have to manually stop at the end of each track and start the new one, and that provides a lot of room for error.
And if they have to fade the faders on the soundboard up and out, and they have to count it out, it's like, well, then they're going to need to practice it, and they're going to need a sheet that says that stuff.
And QLab lets you set all of the fades as well, so you can tell it to fade the sound down on a 6/5 second, whatever fade. You can actually shape the curve of the fade. If you insist on running your sound off of Spotify, buy a fucking license. I'm sorry. Just I can't with the, subscribe to Spotify for $9.99 a month and get there. If the ad starts playing in the middle of your show, that's bush league.
That's death.
I've seen it so hard. It happens, you guys.
It's
Don't
rough.
do that.
It
But
takes
also,
you
don't
right
do it
out.
off of Spotify. Use QLab. It's free. It's wonderful. You know someone who has a Mac that they can lend you for a bit.
Adapters. I, generally speaking, roll with 1/8" stereo jack to 2 1/4" adapters to plug into boards all over the place. I frequently forget it at different venues, so I just kind of always have one. There's a link to an Amazon purchase here. You can also go to Ametron, Ametron, on Argyle down the street. They have every adapter known to mankind, person, kind, whatever. Yeah. And they can also set you up at pretty decent prices. That's where I go for all of my gear, all of my little interconnecting things. It's super handy. And if you just have an adapter in your bag and you're rolling out, particularly for anyone who's doing the, if we're still doing it, the like featured elements at Fringe Central where people do the cabaret. I don't know where we're at with that, but in past when we've done cabaret, people always hand me their phone and it's like, here, play the music from the show. It's these 3 cues, here we go. And it's a thing for which I don't have an adapter to make audio come out.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, I can play it from here, put a mic on it, I guess. Like it's not really great. So whatever adapters you need for your device that's playing back, you're gonna wanna make sure that you have an extra one of those with you at all times.
Your venue should be able to tell you what kind of input they need. And it's most likely that your venue will have an 1/8" jack, which is your standard headphone size thing, which you can plug into any computer, tablet, etc., unless it's got one of those weird like lightning only, in which case you need that adapter. But better safe than sorry. If it's a $2 thing, you can keep in your back pocket. It's just nice to have. That's our recommendation.
And it's also cool if you're already buying a show computer to have your show on, like if you're looking at this being the first step of a long and fruitful journey exploring the world of performance art, your investment in yourself is not only a machine, but a necessary device to plug it in wherever you go. A lot of people get picked up for after Fringe extensions, or they may just take their show somewhere else themselves. You may choose to do this if you have a smash hit, or even if you feel like you're not finished and you want to keep going with it. Like, whatever, plan for the future and get something now that's going to come in handy. It's like $7 max.
Oh, okay, one question.
Oh, I can wait.
We already started. What's up?
Oh, okay. I'm running just one slide throughout the show, and I'm going to have to bring a computer to do that. Now, my computer doesn't have an HDMI port. It's just, well, I don't know what it is, actually. But I'm going to need to go to HDMI for the projector. Okay. Are there cables that go from one, like?
Yeah. There should be adapters, and we have a list of adapters.
Yeah, I would contact your venue and try and make sure that whatever outputs you have, they have something that can go between. And if they don't, do they want you to have an HDMI?
They want me to get to an HDMI.
Okay. You're going to need to convert it because most of the spaces run VGA, which is on most monitors. HDMI is a little bit rarer for some spaces because it's got a length limit. So you can get adapters. In this case, this adapter that I'm using right here comes out of the display port on my Mac and spits out to both HDMI and VGA. Belkin makes these. And you
I
can get
think
them on
ultimately,
Amazon and
though,
stuff.
it's a conversation you should have with your venue manager
Yeah.
about what you need and what they need.
Yeah.
So once you've prepped
And if
your-
anything else like that happens, like if someone's like, I need a display port, and you're like, what? Have a conversation with the venue manager or technician and see like what exactly it is that they've got set up. Because if they have an unusual adapter like thing like that, expectation, they should have some sort of adapter for it as well. And then once you go in, you can see what they've got and just get another of that so you have a spare in case somebody's being a total jerk and just cramming stuff in and like breaks it, then you have one in your back pocket to make sure that it works. Like that's gonna be useful for kind of anything really.
Yep, we don't advocate spending all your money, but any little things that you can throw a couple bucks here or there in order to just have backups, it always helps.
Mm-hmm.
Once you have your show file computer prepared for sound and or video, we recommend that you disable the screensaver, disable any hot corners that might accidentally plunge you into sleep mode. We want to make sure that your laptop is plugged in.
To power.
To power. You don't want to run it off a battery and have the battery die, even if you think that you have more than enough. It's just don't deal with it.
Don't risk it.
Turn off all your notifications, turn off your Wi-Fi, close any other programs, go into do not disturb mode, do anything that could pop up on your screen during the show and make a noise and or even just block the program you're trying to use. Just get rid of it and set your computer. It seems like a no-brainer, but in the moment sometimes it's easy to forget. So what I like to do is actually prep my computer beforehand, because I've also produced a bunch of shows in the festival where I've done all the stuff you're doing, and so I get the computer at home and I put it into the QLab and I get the show file loaded up and I turn everything off so that when I get there I just put the computer on the table, plug in the sound, plug in the power, ready to run.
There's a piece called A Computer Prepares on the Figure 53 website that helps walk you through all the steps of prepping a computer for using it as a show computer with QLab, and that meticulously explains how to do all of the nuts and bolts. I recommend just going through it and following it because it's going to knock out a bunch of the problems you may have later dealing with it.
So I think we should jump forward.
You keep saying a show computer. Like, should we not use our own?
By show computer, I mean your computer that you're running the show on.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can, I mean, Sacred Fools has them in all their spaces. I'm reasonably certain. A bunch of spaces have computers that they prefer to have all the shows run off of. My general preference is to have a spare computer with the entire show as it was teched after you finish tech, so that there's no chance of it being the wrong like version. So like you roll in, it's like, it's okay if the computer's broken, I've got mine, and it's the one from pre-tech and nothing's set. And you're like, well, that was a bad backup. You want to make sure you have the one from after tech. Yeah.
So we have a lot more resources and thoughts on on things to keep in mind for sound, and also we have a whole chapter about video, which we're going to skip through. If you are doing video, our basic recommendation is really make sure you got all your adapters ready and make sure you got everything programmed ahead of time.
Because you don't want to, it's so easy to lose hours trying to make sure
Yeah.
the right video is playing at the right time and all of that stuff. And if you're not working with a video designer, it might be worth considering, even if it's just a content creation person who does the Photoshops and the After Effects and whatever, just to take that off of your plate, because
Yeah.
there's enough going on. Unless you're dope at it, you're just amazing at video editing, in which case you know that, so you can ignore me.
If you are working in a venue that has its own QLab computer, they are expecting you to bring a thumb drive with files that they are going to program. Then the nicest thing that you can do is number and label all of your files. Put them numerically in order and have the name of your show. So it would be 1_show name.
01.
01_show name.
0,
02.
0.
There you go. And that way, when the stage manager is programming, everything makes you dummy check everything, and they can just say, "All right, this is obviously the order." They can drop them all in order. Great.
And I've put sound sources and editing sources here. If you're gonna go deep into the woods and playing with your own sound files and stuff like that, I recommend just looking at it and giving it a stab. I think everyone should have Audacity. It's a free piece of software that runs on everything.
Well, I'm not gonna lie, Corwin. I've got some butterflies in my stomach right now, and
Why
my
is
hair
that?
standing on end. That can only mean one thing, which is that it's Tech Day.
Tech Day.
Ooh, it's Tech Day. All right. So it's the day. We've made our cue list. We've made our prompt book. We've got everything prepared. We've got our thumb drive. We've got our show computer.
Bag of adapters.
Bag of adapters. All right. Step one. 2 weeks ago, you did parking recon.
Yeah.
So, as you might have noticed, even coming here today, parking in this neighborhood is crazy. And since techs happen at every different hour and every different type of day, just swing by the day before, look at what the parking restrictions are. If you have an 11 a.m. tech and you're not aware that half of the streets are street sweeping from 10 to 1 that day, you could lose a half hour trying to find parking, and tech, you cannot afford to lose a minute.
I believe it's Mondays and Tuesdays on those side streets here, and don't risk it. You don't want to take a $96 ticket while you're trying to do this. It's just better to find a place that works. Yeah.
Yeah. So step two, tell your entire production team to arrive early. There is nothing worse than having someone who's running late or who can't find parking. It's just not an excuse. We've all been in this city for however long we've all been in this city. Yeah, it's hard to get places and it's hard to find parking, but when you need to, you can do it. And you gotta let everyone know there is no excuse. You are there 15 minutes early, waiting outside on the street, everyone before your show. It's just a nice rule to have.
Mm-hmm. And we also explain half of the people in here are doing one-person shows, so obviously you're in charge of all your stuff. Natch. If you have a cast show, it can be useful to break out job titles in terms of scenic movement. Corwin has stool. Corwin is making sure stool goes where it needs to be.
Brandon has the back problem.
Always.
He just does Pellegrino bottle. There we go.
Pellegrino monologues.
Yeah.
Smash hit 2019.
It is very easy if you are directing and producing. So who's doing a one-person show? Great. And who here is doing a multi-person show? Okay. So, and who here of the multi-person, who here is directing / producing their multi-person show? All right. Cass, you seem like a smart guy. Don't feel the need to be a hero.
Right.
You're going to want to put everything on your own shoulders. You don't have to. What we want you to remember is that delegating responsibilities really helps. Because if you feel the need to oversee every single element of your production, you're not going to have the time and you're not going to have the mental bandwidth to do so, and it's a recipe for failure. So feel free. Yeah, so feel free to break out. All right, so someone in the cast who really understands the scenic, your job is to bring everything on stage, and I want you to please space everything. So you two actors, you're going to figure out, all right, in this scene, because this might be your first time rehearsing, like really rehearsing in the space, we want these things here. These can store here. Let them figure that out so that you can work on one thing, get as many different things happening at the same time with people who you trust, and make sure everyone really understands their job.
And for one-person shows, it's worth having another person just for this, because while I am being lit on stage, I have no idea what I look like. So if
Yeah.
I have Brandon stand in for me, I can sit down and see how it looks and see how the different spaces, how the different parts work, where my basic sort of coverage area is.
Yeah, for one-person shows, it's often quite nice to have a friend be there to help you with various tasks, and also it's just nice to have that little piece of moral support and camaraderie. You can do it alone. Plenty of people, if you really prepare, you can walk in, hand them your cues, and say, "Let's do this." I've seen many people do it quite successfully, but if it's your first time, why not bring a friend?
Make sure the production before you is loaded out before you begin. Yes, our times are set. Yes, we've all done lots of meticulous back and forth emailing to make sure everything is okay. There's an awful lot of empty seats full of people who don't understand that you probably shouldn't just walk into a space at your designated time, because who knows, there could have been a light board explosion and everything is behind by an hour today. Sometimes things occur. So check in with your person, whether it's the venue manager or the tech. They'll set that up with you before you come in. You want to make sure that everything is ready to go when you start, because it sucks when somebody's going over time. Cardinal sin, don't make someone late for something else.
Now,
But it still kind of happens
if the
occasionally.
people before you run late and if you start 10 minutes late, it is reasonable to expect to then go 10 minutes late on your own, but don't expect it. At least check in with your stage manager, say, "Hey, can we still have our full 2 hours," etc. I don't know why they would say no, but if there's some reason why they absolutely have to cut, I mean, it's just don't assume anything.
That has never happened to the best of my knowledge. I know most of the time, if there is an overage like that, they'll accommodate you, because a lot of the time venue managers have learned how to program breaks and padding in between texts, so there's a little bit of zhuzh, but yeah.
Yep.
Excuse me, it's a little cold in here. It's a lot of cold in here.
We have two options. There's too cold or too hot.
Amen.
Should we go for too hot? All right.
We're almost done.
Stop it.
So lighting prep. When you get into your space, you want to find your stage manager / technician. You want to introduce yourself to them. We recommend having one person be the point of contact, because it's very easy for information to for contrary ideas to be communicated if you have more than one person. So you want to have one person and let them know you're the person I ask about lighting and sound. You then want to let the stage manager know your plan for the day. You say, all right, here's our thing, here's our prop book, here's our cue list. We have this many cues. We would like to spend this much time programming. We're going to try to do a scene change rehearsal and go through all the physical stuff from this period to this period. Just going to give a general idea of what you're planning on doing. And then third step is you want to go moment by moment, and you want to build all the light cues and make sure that all the sound cues have the right levels and set them with them. It is courteous when you're working with a programmer to always make sure that they are finished before you give them the next command. So if they're still working on a light cue, don't start saying, all right, so this next cue is going to be, like, wait. So you say, are you ready for the next cue? Fantastic. So for my next cue, I would like this. You're going to want to rush through your programming because of time constraint, but that little extra second of communication will actually ultimately shave off more time. So we already mentioned if you have a one-person show, get a friend to help. When you get into a venue, what I like to do is what's called a channel check, which is just make sure all the lights are working. Incandescent lights are just like light bulbs, they can burn out on occasion. Your venues will usually have spare lamps. The more time you have to try to fix a lamp, the better your odds are that you will get it fixed. And there are some circumstances where you might realize that you have like one lavender backlight that's out and there's just not time to fix it, and that might happen. But if there's a front light out that you really need to see people, the more time you have. So when you get in there, just ask, hey, can we bring up all the lights and make sure they work?
And this goes for tech and the top of each show.
Yeah.
So when you're programming in your time for load-in, a brief check of the systems is advised. It can take you maybe 20 seconds to walk in and be like, all the lights are on. Okay, play the thing. It's a cat meowing. Cool, sound works. Let's go.
Yeah.
Just takes it off your worries to begin.
Now, you should find out what type of storage system your venue uses to back up its show files. If it is a thumb drive, being a thumb drive, all right? You never have too much backup. What I do is I keep the thumb drive on my person pretty much all times, and any chance I get, I take the contents and I put them straight onto the cloud. All right? I have never heard an instance of a show file disappearing during a Fringe run, but that doesn't mean that it can't happen. And if it does happen, you can just go poop, and you're good to go.
With I think almost everybody's getting on the Ion Nomad train, or they're on a manual board. We have examples of cue sheets for how you would cue things with a manual board, like a Leprechaun looks like this.
Yeah. If you have a light board that doesn't take program that's run manually, it's that. And so what I've created is, it should be, yeah. So I created this file, which is also available for you. And what you do is you write the number of the cue. It's usually going to have two faders, an X and a Y, and you literally put the level of each light. So you would say 50%, 1 is at 50, 3 is at 50, 9 is at full, 15 is at 20. And that way, and you print it out or Xerox it or whatever, and when you're running the show, you literally just set those levels. And if you have a venue that does that, you probably have a stage manager there who runs it as well, but that resource exists for you.
Mm-hmm. It's just another way of backing up in the case when it's just a manual board. Okay. Sound prep. Test your speakers and make sure they work. I like to use cat meows. Some people have a song that they like to hear to pump themselves up. You can be doing pump up music time while you're testing your sound. That's kind of cool.
All right, so scheduling your tech. Most Fringe venues give you a tech period that is twice the length of your show. If you're doing a 1 hour show, you get 2 hours of tech time. It is really not likely that you're going to actually get a run through during your tech. And if you feel the need to do a full tech run through before you have an audience, it's probably a good idea to book some extra tech time with your venue and ask to do a dress rehearsal. If you absolutely have to do it, it's possible, but just remember that gives you, if you have 2 hours and you need to spend one of them running, that gives you a half hour to get everything built, 1 hour to run, and a half hour to do notes. What we recommend doing is spending a half hour programming the cues, spending a full hour doing a cue to cue. Is there anyone here who does not know what a cue to cue is? All right, so a cue to cue is a rehearsal where you only rehearse the technical moments. So if you have a long scene, you skip to the end of the scene, and then you start a line or two before the end of the scene, and rehearse from that line through the blackout, scene change, etc. And then as soon as you get to a point of the script where there are no cues, you skip forward until you get to the next sequence.
If it's particularly active, you may want to have them walk the blocking really quick just to make sure the light levels are sufficient. But you don't want to go through every scene because that's going to take away from time to program stuff.
Yeah. So what this lets you do is this gives you a half hour to do some technical notes. This is not a time for performance or directorial notes. This is only technical notes. And then also you want to make sure that you have a few minutes to block your curtain call. Because if you don't tell your actors how to bow, they're not going to have a clue what to do. And you're going to do your first show and there's going to be this wild applause and they're going to, yeah. So just block your curtain call. That's how we recommend you break up your time. You can schedule however you like. We found this to be the most successful.
You don't want to do acting notes during tech, unless it's cheat out. Like sometimes people forget and they're like, "Hey, how's it going today?" It's like, that's a very interesting picture of my back. I have interesting things to look at, but all the cool stuff is happening in that direction. But you don't want to waste valuable time using the instruments that you only have access to in this compressed time frame to be doing stuff that you could be doing in the lobby or at the plunge, less effectively possibly, or in another rehearsal space, because that can be ground out once everything is set, and the performance stuff can be sort of, even over the course of Fringe, things sometimes evolve. You don't want to waste time.
Now, the thing that we have not yet mentioned, that it kind of prevents, there's a lot of footnotes, and as you can see, we're really speeding through this, but if you take the time to read the document, if you care to, we try to include a lot more specific advice, but from a more general design standpoint, speaking as designers, obviously we value the importance of design in theatrical storytelling, but more design is not necessarily a better show. And so, especially with Fringe, when you have a real time constraint, you really need to think about what do you need versus what would you like. Because after Fringe, there are always ample opportunities to take a piece and further develop it and figure out how to add more to it. But if there are certain flourishes from a tech standpoint that you want just because it seems more theatrical, but they don't actually help tell your story, it's worth considering if they really need to be there.
Like video.
Like video.
In all honesty, if you have a backdrop thing that maintains for the length of the show, isn't it a little more interesting to have a banner made and hang it, and then that becomes a specific thing? Because this can't run out of power, the lamp can't burn out on you. It exists in the world, and you know when you have it, and it will always be there. And it really grounds you in a way that video doesn't necessarily do. Also, if you're doing a cabaret performance or some other kind of featured act, truncated version of your show, if you have a thing, any sort of representational prop or banner or something that helps sell it, then that product placement, I should have worked that out in advance, then that can go with you to these other things where you're showcasing pieces of your show, and that can really help set it. Because in cabaret settings, you have 2 chairs, maybe you're just gonna try and do a piece really fast, but if you have a really cool thing that helps sell it, we did a show with a robot that had a gorilla suit, and that guy walked around in it, and it was really cool. It also, if it's something like that, you can potentially have it at parties. Just don't be the guy who's walking around with like a big, heavy thing.
Yeah.
But if there is an item that helps sell it, your promotional opportunities exist beyond just your show. If it's video, not every place is going to have a projector, and the cabaret space almost assuredly does not. So
also consider when you're thinking about all the things that you need to load in and out of the show every time, how many of your scenic items are really necessary to the storytelling of the piece. If you're building this giant set to try to make it look like you're like kind of like a Broadway stage where you have 20 potted plants that need to come in and this and that and this and that, how if the actors never interact with the plants, do they really need to be there? But it's a serious consideration that you need to think, is there a way that I can suggest the placement of this scene using fewer items, using just the actors and the script itself, and really figure out what's necessary and what's not, because every additional thing that you need to cart in is just going to take up more time in terms of rehearsing that load in terms of setting up. It's just more
trying
stuff
to
on your
park
plate.
so you can get it out of your car and into the venue, but then also you have to move your car because you had to park close so you can get the thing out, but then you have to move it so you don't get a ticket. Like, this is all the kind of stuff.
Yeah. All right, so it's time for the lightning round.
Lightning round.
Attitude. Okay, so here are some quick fire pointers to make your tech run really smoothly. 1, bribe your stage manager, bring chocolate, snacks, bring caffeinated drinks, etc. Treat them the way that you would want to be treated if you just worked a 10-hour day full of solving other people's problems.
Have someone on the clock the whole time, set timers. Everyone's got phones and watches and stuff like that. You don't have to be the one in charge of the clock, but have someone do that and have that be their job, because it's going to help keep you on schedule.
3, pee and or poo at home. You cannot depend on the restrooms being available. None of these venues are ADA compliant. There's never going to be enough stalls for all the people that you need to have them. Just don't.
Tech is not a time for creative changes. If a piece of blocking or a directorial choice doesn't work, make a note and fix it in an outside rehearsal space unless it's tech dependent. We've said this before and we like to hit it a couple times.
Yeah. All right, you will likely be insanely stressed. This will be uncomfortable. You might not be used to the experience. If you are a seasoned theater professional, working in a Fringe timeline is very stressful because it's not what you're used to. If you've never done a show before, working in a Fringe timeline is very stressful because it's not what you're used to. Remind yourself that you are here doing this because it is fun, it is what you love. Take the time to cool yourself down if needed. If you feel yourself getting a little overwhelmed, step outside for 10 seconds. Keep your favorite snack on you in your pocket or your bag. Do whatever you need to take care of yourself, because if you are in a high stress mode, that's not going to help any of the people that you're working with.
And for those of you who make bad life choices, there's a tobacco store next to Family Arts where American Spirits are $8 a pack. I'm not happy about giving you that information, but if that's the way you're going, at least know that.
Now, speaking of bad choices, however,
Be sober. Completely, utterly sober for your tech. There's all sorts of things that happen. People have gone to drinking about Fringe and office hours and stuff like that. And it's a great way to socialize and, like, you know, interact with people. But for your tech time, everybody's got to be laser focused and on point. If they only work when they're high, please gently convince them not
that's
to.
complete and utter BS.
Yeah.
This is a rule that I practice actually in my design career, full-time professionally, is I refuse to work with anyone who's on any type of substance. Just don't. If it feels like a beer is going to take the edge off, you're wrong, it won't.
And I refuse to work with anyone who's not on some kind of substance, but
Very good.
it's tempting to go for drinks and loosen up, but you just need to get through the 4 hours or however long you have, and then everyone can go to the bar. It's perfectly okay.
All right, snacks. Bring some snacks. I recommend a mixture of healthy and unhealthy snacks. It's nice to have like a little bit of pirate booty or whatever, but also if you have some grapes or nuts or dried apricots, it's people are going to want something to provide them with a little bit of actual fuel and energy.
If you forget, I think the closest place is the pavilion that's down on Melrose and Vine. And I've made that walk, it's like maybe 15 minutes. But then you might be over at Studio Stage and it's there's nothing there. So if you're on the east side, you might want to catch that before you come in. Because if you get there and forget, then it's all 7-Eleven.
Yeah. And water, bring lots of extra water. It's just always good to have extra water on hand.
Mm-hmm. No one is allowed to leave during tech for any reason. It's only a few hours. Everyone's job is to power through and then get out. You want to get out early. You want to not take all of your time because there will be other people who are not here that are unprepared that possibly would go over. And any space you can give to a venue manager or a beleaguered stage manager to pop out and go to the bathroom is a kindness that they appreciate.
Yeah. Now, it has been my experience working on other people's Fringe shows, never my own, that sometimes you'll have a cast where the director and writer are really passionate about their project, but the actors have been hired off of Actors Access or whatever, and they're maybe not, they're invested, but they're maybe not as invested as everyone else, and they kind of need corralling. So you need to just let them know before you start that this is a time where no BS will be tolerated.
Mm-hmm.
That just be on time, be in the room, do your work, we'll party later, we'll drink later. Don't let them know how high the stakes are for this tech to go well.
Yeah, a lot of people, this is an entry-level thing for them too. For the few people who are doing cast shows, you might just have a buddy who's not used to that kind of focused effort. Many of us are not used to it either. It's better to establish expectations ahead of time than be yelling at everybody on the day. Like, where are you?
Yeah.
Crack the whip, get on here, back.
Campground rule is leave the space nicer than you found it. And so if you walk into a venue and it's not as clean as you'd like, especially dressing rooms, especially dressing rooms. Stages usually go through it at the end, but if you got like some makeup wipes or whatever, just leave the space nicer than you found it. If you're using any type of substance on stage that can make any type of mess, you better be prepared to clean it up. I did a show in 2014, and the show before us had this giant sequence at the end where they flung baby powder in every direction, and we would walk in to load in our show, and there would just be this little talc layer over everything, and it was dispiriting. So just leave the space nicer than you found it.
Think about the bigger picture. Design is an important way to enhance your production, but big design is not a Fringe show make nor break. Trust your work and let the story tell itself. Tech only what you need. You can add fancy design when you transfer to a bigger theater. We just kind of mentioned that as well.
And finally, remember why you're doing what you're doing. You are part of the largest arts festival in the West United States. Fringe
Bigger
is
every year.
Beautiful. Fringe is fun. If you're not having fun, you're not doing it right. My playwriting professor used to always say theater problems are happy problems, and I really believe this to be so. The most stressful tech day you could ever have in a theater, just remember that you could not be doing the show at all. And
At the end of this list, there is an inventory of all of the things we came up with, mentioned. There's also a resource for hiring designers and technicians. Brandon and I are both moderators of a Facebook group called Technical Theater Artists of Los Angeles that now encompasses more members than IATSE Local 33.
I didn't know that. That's amazing.
We're now at around 2,600, something like that.
Yeah.
And that encompasses all levels, all experience levels, all availability levels. So if you need something, especially it's like I need a wagon wheel about 3 feet big. It's really necessary. That's probably the first place to check, because that resource of all of these people get a little ping on their phone, and then they'll come in and check in with you. This is also a place you can go if you have like a question about programming something. If you have LEDs that are flashing and not doing what you want, the answer is buy a Terminator and put it in line. But like, that's where you can go for all kinds of
It's
questions.
a great resource also for hiring people if you need, if you do need your own stage manager, if you want an assistant stage manager, if you're looking for someone to come on board. We do require in the group that you list the pay rate that you're willing to pay. There's no judgment on pay. You can even say this is a voluntarily position. It just has to be stated. And if you do request to join the group, please answer the question, at least one of the questions, and just say, hey, well, I was in the workshop, and we'll pass you in.
What's the name of the group?
It's
Technical
called,
Theater Artists of Los Angeles.
and it is,
Technical Theater
can you go
Artists
back to,
of Los Angeles.
yep, and on the last page of our PDF, there's a link to it.
Tech Theater Artists, oh,
Technical Theater Artists of Los Angeles, yeah.
this is tech, yeah.
And these are links you can click that'll take you right there.
So we've got, what have we got? We've got a half hour left, good for us. Let's open up to a Q&A, pretty much anything. We'll start down here. And
So-
then,
If you've already built your show in QLab, what are you programming for the first part of your tag?
your light cues.
Oh, okay.
And that can be just as simple as, I want that side of the stage, I want that side of the stage, bam, bam. It could be 10 minutes, it could be
Okay.
5 minutes,
Got it.
or 1 minute.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you need? You want us to zoom out?
Oh, the QR code.
Oh, you want the QR code? Yeah. Yes.
Me?
Yes.
So my question is, because I'm at McCadden and they said we can like pay to have it set up on the computer there, I would love to back up the file after it's done. Is that like a very difficult thing
For sound or lighting?
for both, the QLab?
For lighting, the McCadden runs an ETC element, which can be saved onto a thumb drive. For sound, if they run QLab, which I believe they do, there is a function called Bundle Workspace, where it will take all your files, it will bundle it all, and you can throw that right into a thumb drive. Yeah.
And I recommend having 2 thumb drives. In that case, you could buy a 2-pack at like Office Depot or on Amazon, and then you have lighting and sound.
You could just, yeah.
You can do just one. We've definitely done that where an entire show is on a master thumb drive, and then we make a copy of that. So we have 2 masters, and then we both take it with us.
Yeah.
I
Yes?
have a second question. I know a lot of venues have sound. We have a musical, and I was wondering, what is the likelihood of being able to bring in our own like wedge monitors for the?
That is a conversation completely up to your venue managers.
Okay.
And is it track or is it live?
It's all cans.
Okay. You would probably definitely want that. If anyone else is doing a musical and you don't have speakers pointed at the stage and you're doing canned music or tracks, keep in mind that you will probably want to negotiate some sort of a monitor so that the performers can hear the tracks. Because unless you're doing, no, I think that there's no ifs, ands, or buts. You want to do that. In this
If
case,
the tracks are for an acapella musical,
there you go.
then
That's
you probably
If the tracks are all,
blank.
John Cage.
John, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, you got that.
For the-
Here's a little secret pro tip that Amber's gonna close her ears and not hear. But if you need to like curry special favor with your venue for certain things, a great way to do that is to offer to share the resource with other companies. So for example, in 2015, and this is completely goofy, so don't even expect to ever need to do this, but I kind of brought in a $30,000 lighting package and put it up in a theater and said any other show in the theater can use it. if you let me leave this up here. So that's an extreme example, but you know, if you say, hey, if we install wedges and allow other shows to use them, like it's a good way if you need little extra things to offer to share with other
That's
vendors.
a great idea, thank you.
Yes.
I'm just relating back to what you did because I'm doing a solo show and I've got some excerpts that I'm singing 2 tracks to. And I did it once in Solo Fest and it was fine. Are you saying that's not going to work?
No, it'll work just fine. Just give your tech person the QLab file from Solo Fest and they'll update it.
Okay, cool.
And like there are certain spaces like here where the speakers are behind the stage. Speakers work like lights. It's pretty easy to hear something or see something when you shine a light on it, but it's hard to see something if you shine a light like that. So if the speaker is pointed at you, then you can hear it. If the speaker is pointed away from you, it's gonna have to be so loud that it fills the room so the sound bounces back to you, and then good luck singing over that.
I think that metaphor landed, but I do feel compelled to point out that speakers are in no way like lights, because if you point a flashlight at something, you can see it perfectly. Right. Anyway, so I saw you, and then we'll come over here. Yes.
So if you want to use, I'm actually kind of your opinion, I think, on this.
Mhm.
Between scenes, it's like set, like over the course of college, each scene is a new semester. We've tried to decide between using like a slide for each new semester, or like it being like an over the speaker, like fall 2009 or whatever. Is there a better way to do that? Like, is there like is either one of those more preferable? If we're using a slide for nothing else.
A lot of people do that. That's pretty common to do super titles, but
Okay.
then
We
my preference is not, because if it's something that is just a slide, then it's something that can be a sign. And if it's something that can be a sign, then there's an interesting performative aspect to it that is potential. Like there's room
Right.
for it to be something kind of cool.
Right.
Like if it's welcome back graduates,
Right.
and then it's like magnets on a vinyl, and you
Yeah.
just have different years that just
Right.
come out and like,
Well, yeah.
Have you guys ever seen Alton Brown's Good Eats from way back, like the cooking show? Yeah, it's just a fun cooking show, and he had this thing where he hated single-use kitchen tools. And so if there was any kind of kitchen tool that could only be used for one thing, he wouldn't have it in his kitchen. And I kind of feel the same way about theater, which is if there's any theater device that only tells the story one way, you know, why not look for a more interesting way to integrate it? So.
Okay.
I think you also have to ask yourself is putting the list of scenes and when they take place in your program.
yeah,
an
a lot of
acceptable
people
way to
do that.
Yeah.
Because most people are gonna read that beforehand and go, oh, okay, it takes over the course of several years.
Cool.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Also, lamps burn out. It's not great, but
Right.
the projectors are going to be going pretty much all the way through Fringe, and if you just happen to be right before, if it just happens to go out during your show or before it, then what's the
Right.
way
So,
to
yeah.
program that so it fails well, as it were?
Right.
Yeah. Yes.
Hi, I'm Victoria. Thank you for being
Oh,
here.
Victoria. Oh, hello.
May I kindly repeat what you guys can help us with? Would you a specialty if we need more help? Also, how do we get access to the source? What's the access to your files that you are helping us with?
Mm-hmm.
And third quick is I'm using it's a one-woman musical show. I'm using a screen, the LED, behind me with a projector.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have any recommendations on how to use it properly with sound and light and all this.
Yeah. So in order, Corwin is a sound and video designer. I am primarily a lighting designer. Although I speak a little bit of sound and video, but not nearly as much as he does.
And I speak a little bit of lighting, but not near as much as he does.
Yeah. So that's answer one, and either of us are happy to come on and help out as needed.
As available.
Yeah. Answer two is Corwin is going to post the link. If you go to the Hollywood Fringe website event page where you reserved tickets for this event, we have also posted the link to all of these files on that page.
Oh, okay.
So if you go to that event page, in the description at the bottom, there will be a link to a Google Drive that will contain all of this, or you can use this address. And then,
Doing it live.
yeah, and then number three is in terms of how to properly use video. Is this a show that you've performed before?
Not this one, first time.
Okay. All I would recommend is that you kind of figure out what the video is beforehand and kind of practice it at home with the video running, even if it's just on a laptop screen, and just
Right.
kind of talk through it and make sure that everything's programmed so that once you get into the space, you can just plug it in and it's all good.
A cheap and dirty trick that I often do is I go to Goodwill and I get a monitor and I plug in, like I've done here, to the projector into that monitor and use that as my screen, so that we know this comes up at this part, this comes up at this part, and then you can really rehearse with the content. You don't have to buy a projector. They're usually like $15 to $30 for a monitor over there
Where? At Goodwill?
at Goodwill. And there's one right on Vine that sometimes has monitors and stuff like that. You can also go to St. Vincent de Paul thrift store over just, I guess it's Frogtown. And there's a big Goodwill around the corner there that also has a bunch of
So
gear.
what do I shop for? A monitor? How?
Well,
any size?
I mean, this is only if you feel the
Connected
need to
my-
see it, yeah.
Yeah, of course, I wish to see
You
it.
could also, I mean, you could just do it on a screen. You could open up
Right.
your laptop and just kind of stand next to it and talk through and just make sure, we speak ill of video only because video has the most pitfalls and if not prepared ahead of time, it's the thing that can really sink you the most in tech. But if video is an important element of your show, obviously we don't think that video shouldn't ever be used. It's just anything that you can prepare at home and test
Right.
before you get into the space, we would recommend.
What about if it's motion or it's still pictures? It's still.
Doesn't matter, it's the same concept.
And, sorry.
Mostly, if it's motion, then you have two axes of editing that need to happen. There is going to be the content itself, and then the duration of the content. If it's a still, it's the content, and you just throw it up, and it's good. If you're using motion, you're now producing a short film. So all those resources have to enter into the picture, and if you're not already singularly talented at shooting, at lighting, shooting, editing, special effects, content, content delivery methods, file management, backup, and color correction, the whole pipeline of production of motion pictures, you're going to discover very quickly when you try to do it how big that gets and how deep the rabbit hole goes.
No, yeah, other people use, in their shows, use a lot of motion, from the computer. What do you call it? Digital.
Video?
Yeah,
Mhm.
different scenery. You
Mhm.
can use the sky, the waves, whatever.
Absolutely, yeah.
We're talking about just,
Yeah.
If you want to go that road, there's nothing wrong with that. It just means you should probably think about hiring someone to do it, because that's an entire pipeline of extra stuff. Unless, and now there are shortcuts. If it is so simple that you can go to Pixel Bay or any free stock stock footage site, you could just download stock footage and throw it on the screen and you're good to go. A lot of the editing can be done in QLab. You can alter duration of videos in QLab,
right.
especially if it just shows up to set the scene, like Seattle, 1975, and then it fades out after 20 seconds.
If you're planning on downloading images or video from the internet to use, I would recommend that you maintain the same aspect ratio for everything. Make sure that they're all the same size, like crop if you need to, and also make sure that the resolution is high enough, because if you download a small image and then project it up and it gets pixelated. But no, it's very doable. It's just something, prepare it all ahead of time, and then if there's something that doesn't feel correct, feel free to reach out to one of the groups and hire someone. Yeah, Corwin, I'll be able to.
But yeah, let's talk after.
Yeah.
See what I can do.
More questions? Yes.
I'm having the show recorded. Is there anything to keep watch out for? Or do's or don'ts that I need to?
I would recommend, you mean you're filming it for archival?
Yeah, for
Yeah.
like a digital portfolio.
Yeah, I think what you want to do is you want to, when you're programming your light cues, you want to be careful not to have too many bright versus dark cues. Keep all your lighting levels around the same range so that once you set the camera, it can keep up. And then when you get into the space, when you bring in your camera person, I would stand on stage, bring up I guess your brightest light cue and adjust the white balance to that, and then just kind of take a split second to look at it on camera.
Yeah, if anyone is thinking about recording their show, Matt is here and does some of those. There's a couple of other people that do it at Fringe as well. It is worth knowing what your loudest sound is and what your quietest sound is. It's worth knowing what your brightest moment is and what your darkest moment is. You don't necessarily have to have that pre-planned, but as you're going through tech, kind of file away in the back of your mind, because that is just useful stuff to know. And then when you stage it again later, see my cue test, oh goodness, my cue test is I find the gunshot, or I find the explosion, or I find the loudest crescendo of music, and I play that first when I'm programming, because that's going to be the loudest thing. Usually the gunshot is the loudest cue in the show. Then that is my reference point. That becomes my highest level, and then from everything else, I can adjust the levels from there, so that when I come in to test the speakers, play the loudest cue, gunshot, boom, if it sounds the way I want it to, then it's like, great, all the other settings are fine. If the gunshot fires and it's like, pew, then probably a fader is down somewhere, and we just want to make sure that that level gets set where it's supposed to. Sometimes things get missed, so it's worth checking.
Yes.
You mentioned like the pre-show playlist that you might play like as you're loading in.
Mm-hmm.
Can that be put into a QLab?
Absolutely.
So everything's in QLab?
Yep, you can, what you can do is you can create a little group and you can tell it all to autoplay, and the tutorial will tell you how to do it nice and easy, and it all plays together, and then no matter what track you're in, you press a fade and it'll just fade that out.
Cool. And then if some of our scenes have like music inside of the scene, and like a transition music from scene to scene, I mean the audience understands like when music is in the scene and when music is like outside of the scene, right? Like
It's a level thing. You just keep it
that's what I
going.
thought.
And it also helps if you can. So stereo would be both speakers,
Right.
but if there's a boombox over there that's playing the music, if I take it out of that speaker and put it all in this one,
I see.
then it
Okay.
seems like it's coming from that. And then if it's a low enough level, people will buy that.
Now that's
Okay.
sound that can be heard by the characters, it's called diegenic. And music that can not be heard by the characters, that's only heard by the audience, is non-diegenic.
Okay.
And if you want to get really tricksy, what you could actually do, and this is something that Corwin does brilliantly, is you could put some kind of effect on the music that kind of limits the range, that makes it sound like it's coming out of a crappy speaker.
By taking the high end off, and then it's a little tan.
Because we have like okay, I want to ask about this. We have there's only 2 actors, but there's a person who knocks at a door off stage. Like our knocks, can they be put through the
100%.
Is that like the best way to do that too, probably?
I agree.
And just like make it from kind of like you're talking.
Yeah. In fact, if you have that kind of stuff where you need to record things, especially if you do a pre-show announcement that you don't want to have someone come out and give live,
Right.
you can just do that on your phone these days. I did a show, I did the Glass Menagerie at ICT in Long Beach, and I took this laptop and went into the double door VOM area, kind of like the thing right there, and I just, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Glass Menagerie, and I did some little effects and just threw that in there.
Okay.
It doesn't take a lot, because then you can have exactly the that you want. You can record it literally anywhere and then just zip it off your phone into the computer.
Okay. And throw it in a QLab and it's good to go.
Yeah, and you can, why not open QLab? Since we're getting to the tail end here. And I'll just show you kind of how I would do that. Ooh, I hope I don't have anything embarrassing.
So you could do any of the sound stuff in Audition, and then
Yes.
Yeah.
okay.
And I also advocate for Audacity, because it's free. And it runs on Linux, it runs on PC, it runs on Mac, it boots fast.
What does
lean
Audacity
program.
do? Is it a sound
Audacity
editing program?
is a sound editing program.
Audacity is a sound editing program and also a state of mind.
This is what Audacity looks like. So I drag a thing into Audacity, it imports it, and then I can cut just the part that I want. Like, look at this interesting swell right here. So I only want that part of the file. So I'll just go in here, knock that out.
Nice.
Now, let's say I want to do what you were trying to do. I'm going to go to equalization, and that's a goofy curve. Yikes. I'm going to go to telephone, and it's going to roll off the low end and roll off the high end, so it sounds kind of...
Damn you, William Bell.
Yeah, and that's not aggressive enough for me, so I'm going to pull it down even more, so it's a little canned sounding.
Now, a recommendation if you're editing sound, unless you're an absolute professional like Corwin, try to use the nicest headphones you can find,
For
because there
reference.
might be clips or things, like there might not be a smooth fade in that you can't hear on external speakers that you listen to. It's like, oh god, that's
And ones don't plug in, don't use.
oh, I don't think it matters. It's just you want to have
Right here.
yeah. Other questions? Yes.
That's almost a cheap, if you don't have a Mac, you have a QLab, and it's on the drive, I blind hope that everything's there until I meet with the tech. And fortunately, I am actually having a paper tech.
Oh, great.
Right.
Yeah, so is there anything I need to do to make sure that that is as successful as humanly possible?
If you bring your prompt book to the paper tech, you can knock it out in 30 minutes.
Cool.
Yeah.
Especially if you go Q to Q super fast. And you said you already had the show already in QLab and all that.
Yeah, but it was 90 minutes in SoloFest, it's now 50 minutes, so there's some stuff
Cool.
that needs to go, and there's a few voiceovers that I shortened.
You should, I would recommend hiring some sort of tech person to pare down your QLab for you before you go to tech. 'Cause that'll just make your life super simple.
Mm-hmm.
Does someone like Corwin, say, can open that file up on his laptop
Knock it
and you
down
can
real fast.
and just go through it and pop everything out that you know you're not going to need. Because yeah, again, unless you're dealing with that kind of stuff when you're actually paying for space and whatnot, so that.
Well, the paper tech's on Wednesday.
Sure. I mean, but also, I mean, if you're paying your
Yeah.
technician to the paper tech, maybe
Maybe they
say,
can
hey,
do
can I throw you an extra $50 to go
Yeah.
through this? Yeah.
Yeah, could I come 20 minutes early? Are you free? That kind of
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just to go back to QLab, you said, so if I have like 2 short videos, audio cues, and pictures, is it still free? I didn't
Yes.
quite understand. Okay.
For one send of video and for 2 channels left and right of
Okay.
audio, it is free.
By one send, you just mean through the
One
projector
monitor.
and
Yeah.
not like.
In this case,
okay.
my projector is one video.
Got it.
If you had 3 different screens that you wanted to have 3 different signals, you would need a license.
Oh, okay.
And
I
also-
didn't. I thought it meant one video. Like because I read QLab and I was like, does that mean just one video? Does that? I didn't understand
Yeah.
that.
Sorry for the confusion. Yeah,
That
it's,
wasn't you. That was their website.
it does limit some of the things you can do, like geometry manipulation, resizing and stuff. So you will have to edit your things so that they're all the same size, and you'll have to resize it in your editing software.
Okay.
But a license is $4 per performance, and you only need to have it for the performances that you are performing. So you can just rent it, and it is rent to own. So you can budget per performance. It's going to cost me $4 for the QLab for this day. And as you continue to purchase it, once you go past the full purchase price of a video license, you get a video license forever.
I think it's worth noting that QLab in its free form is very utile, and it is unlikely that anyone in this room will need to pay for a license. The free version should do everything that you
Even
need to
for
do.
performance.
Yes.
Okay.
The free version, it's not a demo version where it like stamps a giant
Right.
thing on your thing if you don't pay. The free version is a fully functional version of the software that allows you to send to 2 speakers and 1 projection screen all for free.
Okay.
So you should be great with it. Yes.
So, again, all the files live in QLab, right? You load them into QLab, your audio files, your video and images, video files, all that live in QLab.
There
Yes.
will be in a directory, like you can see here. Let's go to my desk.
Yeah, so technically what it does is QLab is referencing a file. So you'll still need to have a folder that has
Okay.
the things
You'll
in it,
have
and you
links.
give QLab a target. So
Okay.
you want to make sure that all of your files are in one single folder, that they're not all from different folders. And then when you drop a file into QLab, you're saying go to this directory and read this file.
Okay, so it's linked in, it's not,
Yeah.
okay.
Now, when I've finished that, I can go to bundle workspace, and it's going to take all of my files and put them all in a directory of my choosing. That is so embarrassing.
And this is the best way to back up your show file.
Yeah.
So on your backup drive, you should have the QLab file as your bundle workspace, and also that directory folder that has all the
Correct.
files that can be
The
forwarded.
QLab only says what to do with the files. You still need to
Yeah.
have the folder that has
So
the
you need
actual
that,
sound
you need
files.
like, because the workbook is basically a map, and it's.
Exactly.
So this is the QLab file, and then this is where all the audio bundle goes.
Cool.
I can just zip this file. Don't search Google. I could just zip this if I weren't extremely sloppy at clicking, and then that can go onto the cloud,
Okay,
and then that can on a Google Drive or a Dropbox.
right.
Although I'm
Or a thumb drive.
or a thumb drive or all three.
Yeah.
Now, thumb drive. Here's the thing. This little guy, bless his soul, has been through the washing machine twice and is still ticking. But one day he's not going to. So thumb drive is one thing, but I always take at the end of the night and put it onto my computer and onto the cloud as well, because this, you never know what could happen to it.
You want to have multiple.
They're dirt cheap.
Yeah.
These days.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. and also a full show QLab file is most likely going to be under 100 gigs for audio only, even if you have like 20-minute long sound cues. And if it's a full-length video show, say 90 minutes, your chances are it's going to be under 6 gigs.
Corwin, what file type would you recommend making the sound files?
I prefer AIFF because it's uncompressed and the computer doesn't have to do any extra work decoding it. I think QLab is fine with MP3 files, but I prefer not to have that because there's a little bit of a performance dip in uncompressing MP3 files. So if you have, say, 100 MP3 files playing at the same time, you can choke out your processor because it's trying to do too much stuff. I don't know why any of you would be doing that. I personally have only done it a couple of times, but yeah, that can happen.
Okay, so we go here and then here and then here.
I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, when you're copying to the thumb drive like that, you're just copying the underlying things. I'm sort of wondering, if I were to also install a QLab on my own personal Mac, is there a way to basically mirror over the session so it wouldn't have to be rebuilt or anything, just in case their computer goes down, that there's an entire.
So if you program it on their machine,
Right.
what I would do is just bundle the workspace and then just drop the bundle and the show file onto your machine.
Okay.
And then that way, if their machine goes down, you've got the show file and you just open it up on your computer. But I would still also put it on the cloud if you have a cloud service in case your machine also goes down.
The actual QLabs thing, it's going to be this file, which is what I'm looking at here, and it's that for both, for every instance of that file. It points right to this and opens up that way. There isn't like a show crafting thing and then a performance thing. There is a different skin for show mode that takes away the editing stuff, so you can just only play it. This is a spoiler for Ready Steady Eddie Go at Rev Machine, but like you always have editing capabilities for every QLab file. I don't believe they've done like a read-only or locked workspace thing yet.
Yeah.
With my theater, they asked us for either WAV files or MP3. So which one is better, WAV file or MP3?
WAV files are better because they're uncompressed.
And regarding the pre-show announcement, if I don't want to talk before my show, I just want to start, how can we record it or someone else
Record
can say
it onto your phone, you or someone else,
and then they
give
will
that
hear my voice.
file to the
Right,
stage.
and another last question, the music before and after the show, is it programmed in the QLab as well?
Yes.
Can I put it on the first? And it will start playing while people going in, like 15 minutes or whatever.
Yep,
before-
you just tell the stage manager, please be in this pre-show music before the house opens.
Okay, so it's programmed. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
And just to double check, so it's not just the Q drive, it's also the bundle file, because it was created and it was put in Dropbox for me.
Mhm.
And so,
Mhm.
like I said, I transferred the QLab file onto a flash drive, but I also need to take the other file
The
on
QLab
the-
file itself does not contain any of the sound.
It's
Yeah,
a,
Only
it's a
really
contains,
useful.
it's only it's the actions performed with the sound. So you
Okay.
need a separate folder that has the files.
think of it like an Excel spreadsheet.
Uh-huh,
It's gonna point at all the things.
okay,
Or if you think of it like a treasure map,
yeah.
it doesn't have the treasure in it, but it represents where to go to look for it.
Okay, no, that's good, 'cause I didn't
Now, if
realize
you
I
think
had
of it
to
as a
put that
dog
thing
park.
down.
All right, any more questions before we're up? Yes.
And better to do it in version 3 rather than 4, you're saying?
No, you just need to find out what version your venue's running.
Okay.
If your venue's running 4, you should do it in 4. If they're running 3, you should do it in 3.
Yes.
Or if you're using your own machine, you should do it in whatever version works with your OS.
Yeah, because
So I'm supposed to do it on my computer?
Then you need to figure out whatever OS you have. As older versions of QLab don't work on older Macs.
do you know if you are running Yosemite or Mavericks or what your operating system is?
I've got the newest operating.
Then you're good.
And you want 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just read, you said any editing to the images you gotta do outside of QLab. It has no native utilities for like masking or anything like that.
It kind of does. Masking, generally speaking, you're going to want to do black. Let me see. Oh, this is the audition window. You can get there by going to Window, Audition Window, or Shift Command A. And then that lets you program and also see what you're projecting. So there's that.
I mean, the best way really is to just kind of play around with the program and see if it does what you need. If you're not doing it in your tech time, if you're doing it on your own time at home, there's no reason why not to try it in QLab first, and if there's something you can't do in QLab, then you can send it over to Photoshop or a free editor and pop it back in.
Any software for
So I can rotate along any axis, and then that means that my next cue, this is a fade cue. A fade cue basically is like, do this. I can move the audio, I can rotate the image, I can make it brighter, or I can change the opacity, fade it out,
And this is the
stop
free
it.
version, yeah?
I'm pretty sure that any of that kind of stuff, rotating and manipulating the size of the image, is something you need the most basic video license for, which is $4 a day. And if that's the case, you can only rent it for the days that you are programming and performing, and that at least gives you, it's much cheaper to use it that way.
I didn't realize it had that. So you have slide in, slide out, flip in, rotate in, all those
Yeah.
kinds of.
Yeah, there isn't exactly a, there isn't like a, hey, slide this in, but as I program this right now, I just told it to zip in
Yeah.
from off.
Great.
Now, one thing I would recommend, because I used to run into this when doing basic, especially with slideshows through QLab, is if you start layering your slides on top of each other, you need to include a cue that stops the previous cue, or else what happens is it ends up layering photo on top of photo, and that will gum up your processor and potentially crash the software. Any other questions?
Put this kitty in here, I'll show you what you mean.
Okay.
So,
Corwin loves his kitties.
there's there's now a kitty underneath, and I'm gonna try and put up that one QR code, but the kitty's gonna track through unless I have a cue that says fade and stop the kitty.
Okay.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Kill the kitty cue.
Oh, I don't say kill the kitty.
Yeah, kill the kitty.
Okay, I believe
That's
we are.
helpful though. I didn't realize.
Okay, so we really encourage you to go and read through this full document that we wrote. It is something that we've been editing over the last 5 years. We encourage you to look at all the resources. We encourage you to reach out to us through the Fringe website if you have any additional questions. And we really wish you the absolute best of luck with your Fringe show. And thank you so much for being a part of the festival. And can't wait to see you around.
Thank you.